What is going on? It's wild how the standards have shifted so dramatically. They're gone. It's eroded. There's nothing. There's no oversight whatsoever. It's incredible. Atlantic Magazine released more text about the Yemen strike plan from the group chat. We'll start off with Textgate. We'll start off with that. Textgate, Yemen Gate, Houthi group chat gate, whatever you want to call it. I have a lot of unique thoughts on the matter that I haven't really seen be broadly reflected in other mainstream outlets. Let's take a look at what's going on here.
This is CNN Breaking News.
All right, we have breaking news. The Atlantic has just published a brand new piece by Jeffrey Goldberg and Shane Harris. And it has the details and the text messages that the government says was not classified. And it tells you all about what is happening 31 minutes before they launch the planes that drop the bombs in Yemen. Brian Stelter joining us now with more details. There are huge revelations in this, and they certainly, how would you describe what you're seeing in the text messages?
These are shockingly detailed descriptions of the bombs that are about to fall in Yemen.
Sorry, I was blowing my nose, so I muted myself, and then I started hiccuping, so I can't even talk.
And Jeffrey Goldberg is getting these details many minutes before the bombs fall. If this is not classified information, I would like the president to tell us what would count as classified information. Now, The Atlantic is publishing this on theatlantic.com because Trump and his aides have said that none of this is classified. That has been the main defense from the Trump White House in the past 2 days, that these text messages were a mistake. Goldberg never should have seen them, but nothing was classified. Nobody was in any danger. That's the argument we've heard advanced. Because of that argument, Goldberg went back to his colleagues and talked with his lawyers at The Atlantic, and they decided to go ahead and publish the text messages that they had originally withheld. Remember, Goldberg withheld some of this information because he thought it could risk national security, because it could have put U.S. military members in harm's way. So now he's decided to go ahead and publish the full unredacted text message chain with one omission. He is still withholding the name of a CIA employee because the CIA has asked him to do so. So that is notable. There still is something in these messages that is considered so sensitive that The Atlantic is choosing not to publish it. But
yeah, of course the information is classified. What a stupid conversation to be having. I mean, the administration is so wrong. Yeah, obviously it is incredibly classified. You can't. The fact that they were having this convo over Signal is wild. All of this is wild. The fact that they accidentally brought up Goldberg. Our story begins in Yemen. As you guys know, the Ansar Allah movement, led by the Al-Houthi family, also known as the Houthis, which was redesignated as a terrorist group under the Biden administration under Operation Prosperity Guardian, has been maintaining a blockade on the Red Sea, which happens to be along their coastline. Biden spent $1 billion in Operation Prosperity Guardian to try and stop them from overtaking ships passing the Red Sea in an effort to thwart the flow of commerce that goes through Israeli ports. They actually saw a lot of success in this process. The people that, on the other hand, saw a lot of failure in this process was the American government. The American government spent $1 billion and did not end up stopping the Houthis from being able to overtake ships and make it virtually impossible and far too dangerous to allow commerce to flow through the Red Sea. And now the Trump administration is doing the exact same. In a circumstance like this, you have two options. You either try to bomb Yemen again, as every president has done prior, from Barack Obama to Trump 1 to Joe Biden to Trump 2, or listen to the demands that the Yemeni government is making, specifically looking at when the blockade on the Red Sea stopped. Because the blockade on the Red Sea did not exist pre-October 8. The blockade on the Red Sea did not exist during times of ceasefire. They very openly said, we're stopping our blockade. Commerce can flow through the Red Sea once again, since Israel has finally come to the table and agreed to the terms and conditions of their quote-unquote very own ceasefire. That's the process here. You can either listen to the demands being made by the Houthis that is actively trying to issue financial penalties to an apartheid state that is currently doing a genocide. America, being the most powerful nation on the planet, has the capacity to rein in its attack dog, Israel, in the region and say, hey, man, enough. You've done enough genocide. We got to dial this back. But instead, they're attacking all of the people that are trying to stop Israel. But of course, Trump being Trump and having an administration filled to the brim with some of the most incompetent drunkards and rapists has had an incredibly Trumpian moment here. Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor, sets up a group chat on Signal. It's a commercial application that anyone can use. Very strange. Normally, classified information should be documented and kept to secret back channels of communication. You should never use an application that can use the phone numbers in your personal contacts list on your personal phone to make matters of state security, to communicate with people on matters of classified information and war. There's a secondary side to the story that I don't see a lot of people talking about, which is that Signal conversations are slated to be deleted. They get deleted after a certain period of time, and I'm fairly certain that this group chat, the Principals Committee group chat that they had set up, that they actually invited Goldberg, Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of the Atlantic magazine to, accidentally, was slated to be deleted. This is illegal. This is illegal. These sorts of conversations are supposed to be documented and logged. It doesn't have to be revealed to the public, but they're supposed to be documented and logged. The very fact that they are having secret convos like this that are slated to be deleted is dangerous. It is a way to skirt accountability, and that is precisely the reason why it is illegal, just so you understand. Disappearing message time was set to 1 week. As I said, these are the text messages that were fully revealed, from what I understand, by Jeffrey Goldberg and The Atlantic. And as you can see, it says, Michael Waltz, National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, added you to the group alongside 18 other members. Every single person on that Houthi PC small group is a person that's supposed to be there. Well, I guess technically no one is supposed to be there because it's not supposed to be on Signal, but these are the people that are supposed to be having this conversation, with the exception of Jeffrey Goldberg. My opinion on this is a little bit different than the way that the media is covering it, because everyone is focusing on the incompetence of this administration. Everyone is focusing on the national security issues that this presents. As someone who thinks that the American actions against the Houthis is completely unjustifiable and on the wrong side of history and on the wrong side of morality, as someone who believes that the American State Department could do a whole lot of good and refuses to do so and does a whole lot of bad instead, I don't necessarily care that they are being incompetent. I wish that they would be less belligerent and still be incompetent. I care about their belligerent nature. I care about their violent nature. I don't necessarily care that they are being incompetent and accidentally revealing the comings and goings of how the executive office makes wartime decisions. And I've always maintained that I'm pro-leaks. Okay, and there it is. This is from April 14th, 2023. I like leaks. I don't care if it's because you saw massive harm being done to civilians at the hands of our military and wanted to blow the whistle, or because your Groyper Discord kittens were acting out of line and you needed to teach them a lesson. This is what I said about the Groyper military guy who leaked state secrets back then. Leaks are good. I'm pro-leaks. This is how good journalism happens. Now, of course, lucky for them, even though they were unlucky and invited Jeffrey Goldenberg into this conversation, lucky for them, Jeffrey Goldenberg is not a good journalist. He's a bad journalist. He's a stenographer for the State Department. He has actively championed the Iraq War and followed through on the lies that the American government was presenting. So for that reason, he managed this in I think, the worst ways possible because he's a careerist. That's precisely the reason why the National Security Advisor, Michael Wallace, had his phone number to begin with. Everyone's focus on this has been the hypocrisy, Hillary Clinton vindicated, or the fact that they made this like blunder, this very stupid mistake. And I get that. It's funny, okay? That part is funny. And their defense of this, the administration's defense of this has been even funnier. But I think it's still more important to remember that these guys are talking about blowing up civilians in the poorest nation on the planet. And for what reason? Because the poorest nation on the planet has decided to take matters into their own hands against a much more powerful nation in the region doing unlimited child murder in a genocidal campaign that they have enacted. I think that in and of itself is far more important to discuss, and I don't see anybody discussing that aspect of it. I truly don't see a lot of people discussing that aspect of it. But I digress. Let's get back to the drama of it all.
But the headline here is that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth did send detailed descriptions of the military strike in Yemen to this group ahead of time. Goldberg was able to read these messages ahead of time. He looked at it and didn't know if it was real or not, but then he looked on social media and saw that the bombs were beginning to fall in Yemen. People can read this for themselves on the Atlantic website, but what you see in Hegseth's message, the key message here is from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and he specifies the timing for the attack, the first wave, the second wave, which military fighters were going to be used, and exactly what would happen when. So again, if that's not classified information, honestly, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. I just want to quickly read one of the things. It says, time now, weather is favorable, just confirmed with CENTCOM. We are a go for mission launch. And then it describes in detail what they are about to do. So clearly, these are war plans over and over and over again. Pete Hegseth has said these are not war plans. This is going to be a very difficult thing for the administration to deny at this point with this being published. Thank you so much, Brian Stelter. Stick around with us for a second. John?
All right. And furiously going through these texts right now to get a sense of what they are. I want to bring in our chief national security.
In the military, if someone did this, you'd be violating UCMJ, of course, but also Pete Hegseth. If you had that many openings as someone with alcoholism issues, if you had been alleged to have somebody and there was a police report about it, they would never elevate a normal person and give them top security clearance, let alone even like low-level security clearance. So yes, when you are at that level, when you are a rider of Trump, they just kind of let you do it. It does not matter. None of this stuff matters. How could they plan out how to bomb the most civilians possible using signal instead of a skiff? Yeah.
Security reporter Alex Marquardt. And Alex, what is striking is that some of the messages that were sent before the attack took place talked about which weapons, which aircrafts would be used, and what time the bombs would be dropped.
Yeah, and this all goes to the question of what are war plans, because the pushback that we have heard from the Trump administration and from Pete Hegseth specifically, who put the most detail in this chat, was these are not war plans. So that's what they're quibbling with. These are certainly strike plans because this is an extraordinary amount of detail. Now, The Atlantic is saying that they feel comfortable publishing this because of this repeated pushback from the administration that what we are looking at is not classified. But I just want to reiterate what our colleague Brian Stelter said. If this is not classified, we don't know what is. This is some of the most valuable information when it comes to carrying out strikes that, in fact, the CIA Director John Ratcliffe said yesterday, this is the kind of stuff, these pre-strike deliberations should take place in classified channels. They did not. So not only do we have all kinds of information about what was going to happen, we now also have information about what happened afterwards, essentially a post-strike assessment report, which is not something that we had seen in the original report from Jeffrey Goldberg. All he had said was that Pete Hegseth, in the hours prior to this strike on the Houthis on March 15th, laid out operational details, timing, weaponry, etc. So a lot more details here. We have at 12:15, Pete Hegseth says the first launch of F-18s. And then in all caps, as he's laying out the timing of how this is going to go, he writes, this is when the first bomb.
What was the best way for Goldberg to have handled the situation, in your opinion? Never revealed that he actually has access to this data until he gets something that is so alarming that he writes about it. I think he just stays in the chat. If they don't recognize that he's in the chat, he just stays in the chat and he keeps logging for as long as he can. Or he reveals the plans instantly. That's espionage? No, it's not espionage. You want to know why it's not espionage? Because they up. It's not like he snuck into the chat. They added him. What do you mean? You can't say something is espionage. Put me down? No, I will not be putting you down. I'm going to shake you a little bit too. Shouldn't this one action already be enough? Like in any other administration, I can see this being a huge deal compared to now. No, nothing is a huge deal anymore. Would have been illegal for him to do this. He has an affirmative duty to let them know he f***ed up. They f***ed up, you mean, not he. I know what you're saying, but he can't just lay in wait. Yeah, I don't care. I don't care about the affirmative duty in this situation. I don't think you guys understand. I am an unconditional supporter of Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, Chelsea Manning, and many others. Okay? So you're not going to get me to go, yeah, he actually shouldn't gather as much intel as possible and then blow the whistle on all of it. What are you talking about? He's a journalist. The expectation from us as American citizens should not be to have journalists play ball with the State Department. Every single person, every single journalist should be inherently contentious towards the State Department. But because in the aftermath, especially of 9/11, this attitude has completely been shredded, that we don't even expect them to do journalism. We expect them to be good people that never violate any rules or laws. Like, what are you talking about? Virtually every big investigation from the Pentagon Papers all the way back to uncovering the massacres in Vietnam, shouts out to Seymour Hersh for that, they were all actions that were inherently against the State Department's opinions and goals. And they were illegal, technically. Modern liberals have unironically forgotten about what journalism is supposed to be. Playing ball with an administration and playing ball with a government is not what journalism is. But of course, that's the reason why Mike Waltz, the freaking national security advisor to the Trump administration, has Jeffrey Goldberg's phone number to begin with. That's it. It is the heart of the problem with modern journalism. It is part of the reason why people don't trust journalists in general. And I talked about this yesterday. Hey, journalists here, the reality is if you add a journalist or invite them into a room, you open yourself up to getting reported on. It doesn't matter how they got there. For example, the reporter going into your bedroom and reporting on your phone call with your manager, it is part of the game. People in chat are dumb. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's free game, baby. What is a journalist supposed to do? Then they have their job is not to do journalism. Their job is to be a stenographer. And you're openly recognizing that. You're openly stating that you want journalists to be a stenographer of the State Department. Like that's wild to me. I don't understand that at all. I tweeted about this yesterday and people were kind of mad at me for that as well. I said, where is it? Jeffrey Goldberg refusing to dump all the text messages in the Houthi signal chat is exactly why the NatSec advisor had his personal phone number. It is precisely the problem with fake journalists at legacy publishers. They're stenographers of the State Department. This person says he hasn't dumped them yet. They're going to be pulled by Senate Intelligence Committee after testimony from everyone involved that no classified information was shared. It's not ideal for Twitch streaming, but sometimes it's better to be patient. It's like, this is not about Twitch streaming. Like what? The expectation that you have to wait for the State Department to tell you what you are allowed to report is insane. It's crazy to me. Sometimes it's better to be right than to be the first to post about it. What? They think you were wrong because they got published? Wait, what? People were mad at you for that. Your replies are very stupid. Yeah, always. It's Twitter. Twitter is very stupid. Wait for the State Department to censor potential info that shows how dumb the admin is. Yeah. So here's the thing. What you're supposed to do in this situation is go to your legal team that knows what kind of information is not publishable, okay? You're supposed to black out certain pieces of information. Like, you can't, there's an argument to be made about not uncovering, like, CIA operatives, for example. I understand why, you're not supposed to unmask active duty service members and put their lives in harm's way. It's a moral, there is also like a moral argument there as well in terms of like, do you want to be responsible for someone getting killed, right? Like, that's a thing that you have to think about. One of the best examples of this, of course, is the way that the now disgraced but formerly award-winning journalist Glenn Greenwald, and the way that he went about reporting on all of the information uncovered by Edward Snowden. There were plenty of parts of the Edward Snowden documents that were, of course, redacted. Same with Chelsea Manning. There's always going to be plenty of parts that will be redacted. Okay? Now read your own tweet. What do you mean? I understand that part. Okay? I understand that. When I say dump all the text messages, I'm saying you can redact key aspects of it. Playing ball with the State Department and waiting for them to give you the go-ahead is not journalism. At no point am I saying you should wait for the State Department and get the go-ahead from the State Department. That is not journalism. The irony, of course, is that there are still parts of the text messages, from what I understand. If you get the go-ahead from the editor of the State Department, you don't get the Watergate leaks. Exactly. That's what I mean. Like, what are we talking about? Like, I think maybe a lot of people don't understand, like, the history of journalism in the United States of America or how it's supposed to work. And that's fine. That's okay. I mean, this is a big part of why I do what I do, where I try to explain to you media literacy and look at American media and Western media and media all around the world through a critical lens. And this is part of it. This is part of my job here. But so much reporting would just never be released if they waited on the State Department to give you the go-ahead, in which case that's not journalism at all. That's just, you're being, once again, a stenographer for the State Department. Whistleblowers are supposed to uncover truths that the government wants to hide. It's very interesting that people don't understand this. It's not Jeffrey Goldberg's job to maintain state security. His job is actually to sometimes violate state security. His job is directly supposed to be adversarial to every single person that's in that group chat. You're not supposed to play ball with them, ever. If you are playing ball with them, that means you're not doing journalism. You're doing the opposite. That's why I say he is a stenographer of the State Department rather than one who is directly at odds with it, which is precisely the reason why this conversation now is on the aesthetics and the silliness of the administration, and not necessarily the actions that were being taken here.
Bombs will definitely drop. That is extraordinarily sensitive information. And the point that we have been making, and that Jeffrey Goldberg and his colleague Shane Harris make in this report, is if it were not Goldberg in this chat, if it were someone else who could have shared this information with the Houthis, with other adversaries, they would have had access to an extraordinary level of detail about what was just going to happen. But I really do want to highlight some of the new information that we got here about what happened in the wake of this strike, because what we had understood was that Pete Hegseth and perhaps John Ratcliffe, the CIA director, that they had put the most sensitive information into this group chat. Here we have Mike Waltz, the national security advisor. He's also adding some extraordinarily sensitive information into this chat because he gives the group a sense of what happened in the aftermath. He writes that a building collapsed. He actually said that specifically to J.D. Vance, the vice president. He talks about this building collapsing, the fact that they were able to kill what he called the top missile guy who was walking to his girlfriend's building, and it has now collapsed. So this is an after-action report from the National Security Advisor. He praises the intelligence community. He praises Pete Carilla, the head of Central Command. So this is just, again, a remarkable.
How can people see the state media as a sign of totalitarianism but want the State Department stamp on all information? I know. It's like people talk about the restrictions placed upon free press in China, and then without a shred of irony will unironically say we need to implement similar structures here in the United States of America. And it's like, how are you? No, I want journalists to operate freely and be adversarial both in China and also in the United States of America. Like, what are we talking about? It's very important. Like, why are we waiting for the stamp of approval from the state for journalists to do their job? If that was the case in every single story, there would be so much information that you'll never get access to. Required reading in journalism school should legit be manufacturing consent. Changed my whole perspective on how I work after I read it. Yeah.
Level of detail. We have heard in the past 24 hours the Trump administration sticking to their guns, saying that none of this is classified information, but that they don't want it out there because they don't want, as Carolyn Levitt said, internal and private deliberations amongst high-level senior staff to be put out there. They objected to this release, but we now have much fuller detail in terms of what was in these text messages on this Signal chat. And of course, guys, this comes just
especially this administration, you have no duty to defend them. You, as a matter of fact, I would say, have a duty not to defend them, to constantly present yourself as an adversary. If you are a journalist who cares about this job, who cares about the future of journalism, who cares about the future of democracy, theoretical or in practice, you have a duty not to work with this government and to do the exact opposite. It's crazy. There is nothing, no holds barred. It's crazy to me that people still maintain this notion that you have to make sure that the information is that you're presented with due to the ineptitude of this administration is one that you have to get additional stamps of approval from the state from. Like, get the out of here. How is that any different than like having a military censor, like in the IDF, carefully go through everything that you are releasing? Then it's not real journalism in that point.
An hour and 15 minutes before these intelligence officials are supposed to sit down again in front of an intelligence committee on Capitol Hill.
This is when the first bombs will definitely drop. Again, an extraordinary level of detail on a text exchange before the actual bombs drop. And one point I want to reiterate here is that while Pete Hegseth and others say this was not classified information, that might be semantic only because Pete Hegseth himself can't even retroactively say information was not classified. Alex Marquardt, thank you for that reporting.
Let's get to Jeff Zeleny, who is at the White House for us. Jeff, these are extraordinary text messages that a reporter was added into this group. Mike Waltz saying it was a mistake. How is the Trump administration and the Trump White House going to explain this? And are you hearing anything from them? Because they have been standing by all of the members of this group, including the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth.
Look, Sarah, as you're just saying there, we're getting an extraordinary minute-by-minute look at some of those messages now that the Atlantic has published in the wake of the president's and others' assistance yesterday. There was no classified information in these, but we're also getting a peek behind what led to the publishing of these. The Atlantic, we're told, as they're writing in the magazine this morning, that they alerted the White House and other national security agencies and said that they did plan to publish and ask if there were any objections. So the White House press secretary is pushing back again this morning, a very familiar page from the Trump playbook, and again attacking the Atlantic, calling it a hoax, going after
They should also be sucking up to the Atlantic, you know what I mean, for not immediately leaking this information, which they should have, in my opinion. He should be kissing Goldberg's feet for not immediately verifying whether or not this group chat was had any veracity. Like that's another thing. Jeff Goldberg being like, oh, I thought it was a joke. Like, dude, what is wrong with you? You are the editor-in-chief of a prominent legacy media publisher, and you didn't, like, you had this incredible scoop dropped on your feet, okay, placed upon you on a silver platter, and you didn't investigate further. You didn't, like, try to see if these numbers were actually the numbers of the people that you were in the group chat of, to figure out whether or not this was a real conversation taking place and then instantly report on it. Every part of the story frustrates me as someone who does a lot of media criticism, okay? Like, it's insane to me that he was just like, oh, I was in the group chat and I was like, this is a funny meme. Like, you're not a random guy. You're not a random guy. You should know better. And then he left the group chat too. He's like, I'll see myself out. Peace, boys. Every part of this is so frustrating. Him saying he thought it was a joke is a lie, bro. Yeah, I'm willing to bet that is a lie. Yes.
Some long-held grievances that the president has held with Jeffrey Goldberg, who's been the author of several pieces over the years that the president has not liked. But the White House press secretary is also going after a Wall Street Journal editorial this morning that is taking a specific look at Steve Witkoff. He, of course, is one of the president's close friends, who's a Middle East envoy. He was meeting with Vladimir Putin on March 13th at the time that all these conversations and signal messages were going on, but the White House is pushing back and saying he was not using his personal phone while he was in Moscow. He was using a government phone when he returned back. But the actual substance of this, so this is what certainly will be shined a light on at the House hearing that is now scheduled to begin in just a little over an hour. The very specific details of these wartime plans, from the weather conditions for the bombs are about to drop. So again, as we saw yesterday, the light was shining on the defense secretary. We saw the director of national intelligence and the CIA director saying it was up to the defense secretary to answer questions if these were indeed the classified war plans. And now we can see for ourselves very operational.
I'm a fan, but why'd you use a rare opportunity to noticeably call out Elon Musk's corruption and racism to invite him to collab and game with you instead? Why do you want to collab with a Nazi? As a fan, I think you should probably understand that if he were to come on this stream, it would not be to simply collaborate and have a tickle party. I think that's just like me saying, like, come on the stream. Are you okay? Like, do you think that if Elon Musk came on the broadcast that I wouldn't use that as an opportunity to ask him some serious pointed questions? You think I would you think I would just like have fun with him, like, and talk about how wonderful he is? Perhaps you should ask yourself how you arrived at such an unimaginably uncharitable and perhaps stupid opinion of me. Ask yourself that. It's just negative critical thinking skills all the way down, I think. Wow, Donald Trump wants to come on your stream. It seems like you want to platform Donald Trump. Sweetie, have you thought about the repercussions of platforming the president or platforming the shadow president? Also, it's so funny because, like, Elon Musk, despite his endless stupidity, also understands that invitation is simply bait and didn't bite it. But that chatter personally thinks I love Elon Musk now. What a strange way to approach this issue.
Details there that certainly are now giving new fodder for more questions. So the White House was thinking yesterday, was hoping that they were going to put this behind them, at least the political fallout from this. And they're trying to make it into a political scandal, not a national security controversy. We shall see how successful they are in doing that. But now, having all of these plans in front of us, it certainly looks like minute by minute by minute what was about to happen. Certainly seems like war plans and war planning to anyone who's reading it.
Latest fallout from the national security breach in the Trump administration. A reporter mistakenly invited to a group chat about an attack on Yemen on a widely available messaging app.
And top intelligence officials face questions, as you can imagine, on Capitol Hill as the president defended his national security advisor. Our chief global affairs anchor, Martha Raddatz, has the latest for us. Good morning, Martha.
Good morning, Robin. This morning, all eyes once again on the White House. This has been an extraordinary 24 hours with the president and some of his most senior cabinet officials trying to brush off this story by attacking the reporter Jeffrey Goldberg. But Goldberg did not seek out this explosive story. He was handed it.
Yeah, the media intrigue side of the story is actually shocking. Like, I haven't heard anyone from any serious news publication turn around and say, it's kind of odd that he didn't reveal this information immediately. As a matter of fact, they keep celebrating the fact that it was actually Jeffrey Goldberg and not some other scary person, like a person who would do real reporting on the matter. It just strikes me as so strange because, like, it almost feels like the media, all of these, like, legacy publishers are unironically praising Goldberg for doing something that their jobs require him not to do, for doing the opposite of what he was supposed to do in that process. It's very strange. It's very, very strange. I don't know.
This morning, The Atlantic calling the Trump administration's bluff, publishing the entire text chain between the administration's national security team on the operational plan for this month's U.S. attack on Iranian-backed Houthis. A new article from editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg shared the detailed text from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, sending the group a rundown of the operation from the time F-18 fighter jets would launch to when the first bombs would drop, and the time Tomahawk missiles would launch. The Atlantic also publishing most of the names of the people included in the chat. This morning, the White House doubling down on claims these were not war plans. President Trump's national security team on the defensive, with Democrats now calling for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's resignation. The secretary trying to deflect any blame and downplay that extraordinary security breach, where Hegseth reportedly shared highly sensitive operational plans in a group chat about this month's U.S. attack on Iranian-backed Houthis.
Nobody's texting more plans. I know exactly what I'm...
Sorry to bother you, but will you cover the kidnapping of a Turkish PhD student by ICE? No, I will not. I refuse to. What do you think? Do you think it's on the docket? Yes. The answer is yes.
Doing exactly what we're directing, and I'm really proud of what we accomplished. The successful missions that night and going forward.
Just hours earlier, President Trump's national security advisor, Mike Waltz, saying the blame lies with him.
I take full responsibility. I built the group.
In the White House with President Trump, Waltz unable to explain how journalist Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic was invited into the chat group where war plans were laid out.
I've never met, don't know, never communicated with, and we are...
How did his phone number get in your phone, big dog? How'd that happen? How? You know? Important questions.
And we are looking into and reviewing how the heck he got into this room.
President Trump last night in an interview with Newsmax with his own theory.
What it was, we believe, is somebody that was on the line with permission.
Michael Waltz claimed that he's never met, don't know, never communicated with Jeffrey Goldberg. Here's a photo of Waltz standing next to Goldberg during a 2021 event at the French embassy. The event Waltz attended, a Q&A with French filmmaker, was moderated by Goldberg. He's right behind him, dude. It's like Elon being like, I've never seen Ghislaine Maxwell. I've never heard of Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't even know what she is. I don't know what she does. I have no idea what she's about to do. Never seen her.
Somebody that was with Mike Waltz, worked for Mike Waltz at a lower level, had, I guess, Goldberg's number.
This is also funny. Okay, this is also pretty funny because even even Waltz hasn't gotten his story straight. Like when this came out, and they had like what 2 days now. The immediate goal should be to find a coherent narrative and stick to it. And because they are so incredibly incompetent, they can't even find a coherent, consistent narrative here. And the part of this that I don't see a lot of people talk about is this. This is illegal. You cannot have disappearing messages in 4 weeks when those are when it's the principals committee having private correspondence over classified war plans. You can't talk about striking a foreign nation, which, by the way, is still at a certain point in time required congressional approval. Okay, we are so far past that point. I'm not even going to get into it because they're declared a terrorist organization, so you can do whatever you want, and there's no congressional approval necessary. But like at a certain point in time, this would be the main conversation. They'd be like, what do you mean you're using American military without congressional approval to strike foreign countries? That seems insane. That seems illegal because it was, and it still should be. But we're not even having that conversation. And also, they're not even having this conversation. What is going on? It's wild how the standards have shifted so dramatically. They're gone. It's eroded. There's nothing. There's no oversight whatsoever. You got a bunch of dudes in a group chat with their personal phones with disappearing messages going, yeah, we should strike this place next. Yeah, hell yeah. I didn't even look to see who else was in this group chat. I'm sure it's fine. It's copacetic. Let's go. It's incredible.
Or called through the app, and somehow this guy ended up on the...
Couldn't they argue it's the same as a phone call? No. Okay? Because, again, phone calls like this are supposed to be done with... are supposed to be documented. Okay, you can't do that on a phone call either. You're not like there are places where you can do this sort of there are places where you can have this sort of back and forth, this sort of communication through a secure line with all of the conversation being documented. You can't just do it via text message. What do you mean? You might as well tweet it out, you know? Hey man, let's just have this convo in broad daylight on Twitter. Let's have this back and forth on Twitter. We'll do a Twitter comms for it. It's ironic because there are chatters in this community that have security clearances. They all know that if they were to do something if they were to do something that is like a fraction as bad as what these guys did, they would be put in prison. They would lose their security clearance. They would lose their job. And perhaps they would be facing prison time, because for normal people, you go to jail for this. This is not just like a minor violation. This is a major violation.
Call.
Goldberg says it was Waltz himself who added him to the chat on the app Signal, where he says he saw texts from Hegseth that laid out specific war plans, saying the plan included precise information about weapons packages, targets, and timing.
There was no classified information, as I understand it. They used a app, if you want to call it an app, that a lot of people use, a lot of people in government use, a lot of people in the media use.
Signal is an encrypted commercial messaging app, but it's not clear to transmit classified information or presumably highly sensitive war plans.
Yeah, here's the video. A leaked private training video from ProPublica that uncovered the... Hold on. How do I...
Yeah, so that's where things get really tricky as a political appointee.
Here.
And you mentioned emails a lot, but Michael, what are other records? Do Signal chats count as records?
Yeah, so that's where things get really tricky as a political appointee, especially, for those who've never worked in federal government before. There's plenty of apps and other messaging platforms out there, whether it's deleting messages, encrypted communications, or whatnot. But all the agencies under the federal government are governed by certain records retentions policies. So you have to be careful with whatever agency you're working at, that you're following those policies. That's another way that political appointees get into trouble sometimes, is they're using these encrypted chat platforms or self-deleting messages, and they are, in some sense, violating the law by deleting those. Because if you're conducting official business, whatever communication was transmitted to conduct that official business, that's a federal record, and it needs to be properly retained so that someone can request it under FOIA.
And you mentioned emails a lot, but
Yep,
Michael...
they know. Of course, it's illegal. Yes, it is totally not allowed. Big time, okay? It's super illegal. You can't do that. There needs to be proper documentation. Like, even if it's not made public, it needs to be in the public record albeit the classified parts will be redacted, but you need to go back and be like, why did these guys make these decisions? Is crazy. Ironically enough, half of the conversation about like Hillary's butter email scandal was about this.
National security officials are told to.
Trump was like, lock her up. Talking about Hillary Clinton, which, oh God, it would have been so sick if he actually had done that, but he's a coward who lies about everything, including all the good things that he was supposed to do. But, you know, this is what the butter emails was about. The butter emails was literally this.
To rely instead on secure rooms at the White House and elsewhere.
I gotta pee.
In 2021, a Pentagon internal watchdog report found Signal to be an unauthorized means of communicating sensitive information and breached the department's records retention policies. But even though the Trump administration is trying to deflect blame, Democrats on the Hill are pressing for accountability, grilling intelligence officials on Tuesday.
This is utterly unprofessional. There's been no apology.
It's an embarrassment. Senator, you need to do better. You need to do better.
Demanding answers from the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and CIA Director John Ratcliffe, two officials who were on that signal chain. The growing scandal even has some Republicans breaking ranks with the administration.
What do you make of the White House saying that no war plans were shared, criticizing the reporter?
That's baloney. I don't think they ought to just be honest and own up to it.
Gabbard and Ratcliffe will be back on the Hill today facing more questions, and the controversy could grow. The White House confirming this morning that Elon Musk's team is now involved in efforts that the White House says will make communications more secure and efficient. Robin?
So many layers to this story. All right, Martha, thank you.